Hi, this is Colin from the History Pilgrim. I hope you've been enjoying my videos and I would be interested to hear your comments. Be sure to like and share with a friend. Reigning for more than 2 millennia with a history twice as old as ancient Rome's, ancient Egypt's legacy is one that few civilizations can match. For how long it lasted, one has to wonder why the reign of this civilization ended. The origins of Egyptian civilization is a tapestry woven from myth and history, which stretches back to the dawn of human settlement in the Fertile Crescent of North Africa. The emergence of this society, often debated as one of the cradles of human civilization, is one of geographic fortune, innovative planning, and gradual evolution. The Nile River, which flows south from the Mediterranean into arid North Africa, is the lifeblood which birthed Egypt. The flow of the Nile River deposited rich silt onto the land, which created fertile land ideal for agriculture. The ability to grow grain in abundance on the shores of the Nile River led to the growing of a large population. The large deserts meant that enemy armies would need to trek vast distances across an open desert or the sea to wage warfare against Egypt, which further led to its growth. Plenty of nomadic groups were never able to survive the armies of Assyria or Mesopotamia to the point where they could settle down and build true cities. The domestication of animals such as sheep and the growing of wheat and barley meant that Egypt had a surplus of food large enough to grow a large population. When a group of people is not constantly trying not to be taken over or struggling to have enough to eat, this gives them more time to devote to the creation of laws, government, and inventing. The ancient Egyptians invented so many things such as pottery, irrigation, beer brewing, contraceptives, paper, medicine, astronomy, and cosmetics, to name a few. The Egypt which is most commonly cited as the Golden Age of Egypt of pyramids and mummies was referred to as the Old Kingdom, which lasted from 2600 to 2100 BC. During this era, the Great Pyramids at Giza were constructed, which reigned for over 4,000 years as the tallest man-made structures. Mummification would continue in Egypt, although contrary to popular myth, eventually pyramid construction would stop and the dead royalty would be kept in hidden burial plots. It just so happened that King Tutankhamun, who was probably one of the shortest reigning and least effective pharaohs of Egypt, is probably the most famous, due to the discovery of his long-hidden tomb in 1922 by British archaeologists. The creation of a system of writing in the form of hieroglyphics led to the creation of religious texts and administrative documents. It is probably because of the discovery of the Rosetta Stone under French troops in the 1700s that we were finally able to break the code of ancient Egyptian and uncover more information than ever about their civilization. The ancient Egyptian religious landscape was dominated by a vast amount of different gods, but it was under the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten that things began to shift towards monotheism. During Akhenaten's reign in 1336 BC, the concept of an all-powerful being, the sun god Ra, was conceived. Later on, a group enslaved by the Egyptians, the Israelites, would cross the Red Sea led by the prophet Moses. It is commonly debated to have been around 1300 BC. It was under the Israelites that a new religion, which we now know as Judaism, was created. The pursuing of the Israelites to destroy them was something which was exhausting for the Egyptian military. By 600 BC, the new kingdom was largely struggling to still govern over Egypt. Due to Egypt having a weak government during this time, irrigation projects along the Nile River were underfunded and famine began to ensue. It would ultimately be the rise of the Persian Empire to the east, which would invade and occupy Egypt, which would spell the end for ancient Egypt as a powerful civilization. Something that would fare even more disastrously for Egyptian civilization was the invasion by the Greek military under the command of Alexander the Great. Under Greek control, many Egyptian customs and policies were destroyed to make way for new Greek ones. After Greek rule of Egypt ended, Egypt was ruled by the Ptolemaic dynasty. It was under this rule of Egypt that Roman contact began. Luckily, the Romans chose to trade peacefully with Egypt for goods and allowed Egypt to keep their own cultural customs if it benefited Rome economically. Queen Cleopatra of Egypt, who ironically lived closer to today than to the First Kingdom of Egypt, was able to keep the relations cordial between the Romans. Due to all the marble, grain, and papyrus which could be exported through Rome and Egypt, the Romans invested heavily in roads, ports, and cities. The port city of Alexandria contained the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Library of Alexandria, which was one of the top learning centers of the ancient world. Rome imported minerals such as gold and silver, as well as exotic animals from Africa such as lions and elephants to use in gladiator battles in the Colosseum in Rome. Because Roman military presence was important for controlling Egypt's southern border, Egypt acted as a base for further Roman exploration into the African continent. It would ultimately be the rise of Christianity which would spell the end for the pagan traditions of ancient Egypt, such as mummification. As Christianity began to spread throughout the empire, more and more people began to convert to the Catholic faith. Initially, the Romans chose to persecute early Christians. By 580, the first Roman emperor converted to Christianity, and this led to the Catholic religion becoming the official state religion of Rome. The Pantheon, which was once a temple for Roman gods, had all of its statues of gods such as Jupiter and Neptune removed, and replaced instead with statues of Catholic saints. At the same time, other forms of religion were being outlawed, with mummification, which involves religious practices contrary to the Pope, being outlawed completely. One of the most notable cases of the destruction of Old Egypt was the destruction of the Temple of Sepsis in Alexandria in 391 AD. Christian mobs encouraged by the Bishop of Alexandria resulted in the pagan temple's destruction. This led additionally to the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Over time, the traditions we associate with ancient Egypt, which is often so romanticized in films such as The Mummy and Raiders of the Lost Ark, began to disappear to the doctrine of Christianity. The Coptic Christians eventually became the dominant sect in Egypt. Later, after the fall of the Roman Empire, Islamic civilization to the east invaded Egypt, and the Muslim faith became the majority religion. Effectively, the Egypt we know would be lost to the sands of time until the British Empire largely began to uncover and piece together Egyptian history once more in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Ironically, the second best location on Earth to learn about ancient Egypt after the Cairo Museum is not in Egypt at all. The British Museum in London contains more than 3,000 years of Egyptian artifacts. The Vatican Museum in Vatican City also contains large amounts of Egyptian artifacts, as many popes acquired the ancient Egyptians' relics. Because they existed so long ago, there are still some things that we do not know about the ancient Egyptians. For instance, we do not know exactly how some of the blocks which built the Great Pyramid, some of which were heavier than school buses, were moved from their quarries to their construction sites. As time goes on, hopefully we'll begin to uncover more information than ever about this fascinating society. There is a very good chance that there are some tombs in Egypt which have never been uncovered. It is ultimately a combination of things such as irregular currents of the Nile River, the conquests of other civilizations, and the spread of monotheism with religions such as Christianity and Islam, which led to the ending once and for all of the traditions which define ancient Egypt. Hopefully, as time goes on, the legends and allure of ancient Egypt will not be tarnished. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd be interested to hear your comments. Yours truly, The History Pilgrim.